Welcome back to Prey. Now, a couple of weeks ago we covered the mammoth that was the base game's achievements, and now of course it's time for that delicious DLC, Mooncrash. Also, it goes without saying, but if you haven't yet, make sure you go and watch the first part so that you can get all of the juicy context that you'll need for this video. However, in Mooncrash things are slightly different, as this puts the player in more of a roguelike than a survival horror. In Mooncrash, you are thrown into an ever-changing simulation on the Pythias moon base, and we need to repeat the runs to unlock characters, gear, challenges, and the main objective, to have all 5 survivors escape in a single run. Now, that might not sound too bad, however, we have a lot to do for these achievements. So with only 10 left to grab before we put a pin in Prey, let's crack straight on. Also folks, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want more achievement grinds. It would mean a lot. However, for now, welcome to the achievement grind. The DLC starts with Peter waking up on his spy satellite orbiting the moonbase in question, the Pythias. We're told that recently the moonbase has stopped transmitting to us, and we've been sent by Casmacorp to find out why. To do just that, we have recovered an operator and we plug it into our computer. With this, we can now go through simulations on the moonbase to find out exactly what happened. And that's the premise. It's fairly simple to be honest, but that's all that it needs to be. So we load into the simulation for the first time to get our bearings. When in, we find the character select screen of sorts. As I said in this, we play as 5 survivors on the moonbase, but until we unlock the other 4, we must start with a prisoner. A psychic prisoner, as he has been a guinea pig for neuromod experiments, and to say the least, they have left their mark. With that, we glitch load into the first simulation, and once we open the door, we're greeted to the space that we're going to be spending a lot of time on. Now, as I said before, this is a roguelike with a theme being do as much as you can to get your character set up for the next run. Collect neuromods to upgrade the characters, get a high score as you can by killing enemies and finding upgrades to buy items for your characters before every run, find out clues and ways to get into each section, as once every single survivor dies, the simulation resets. So yeah, your average roguelike. Anyway, we made it through the first door, finding some fabrications and tools before we move to the meat and potatoes of the base. This is the main hub, and it powers every single section as well. Here there are 4 main sections including this connecting hub, and to unlock every character and get them all out alive, we need to use every part of this base. For now though, I just explored a little and got a feeling for everything, including finding our first neuromod and installing the prisoner's first power, Psychic Blast, as every character has their own strengths and weaknesses, and of course their own powers. However, back to exploring. We soon head inside one of the buildings and have a wander before we get brave and decide to wrench a hive's nest to death. Yeah, it didn't end well and our first death is officially on the board. So with that death, the simulation resets and we have to try again. This time we head inside the main hub in the centre and come to realise that this is basically where each section gets its power from. And sometimes sections won't have power, and that's just one example of obstacles that you'll find during these simulations. Thankfully though, all of the sections are wonderfully lit for now, so we get back to exploring. Also learning that one of the sections still has a working escape pod, and that might be a wonderful way to live indeed, and eager to survive, we head straight there. Inside are some enemies that we need to take out of course, but once we do, we find the pod and hop on board. Once inside, we sit down and escape, unlocking our next character Joan Winslow, as well as completing some Chasma challenges. But we blast off and that's the first of 5 ways to survive. But with a new character unlock, it's time to spawn in as her and see if we can find escape method number 2. Also, upon loading in, we are told about our Chasma orders. There are 27 challenges that range from story objectives to finding a certain amount of chip kits and neuromods. But for achievements, we need to complete every single one. Now, honestly folks, I'm not going to go through every single life and every single discovery, just the noticeable differences that we discover by going through all of this over and over again. And speaking of discoveries, when we load in as Joan, we find our new type of enemy, the Moon Shark, a ginormous towering beast that burrows underground to stalk its prey, and it is a total bullet sponge. So even though we do try to put it down initially, as there is an achievement for killing it, we are simply not equipped for the fight, so we'll have to wait. Especially since it kicked the snot out of me and now I only have a single health. We then head to the Pythias labs for the first time to get acquainted here. We do just that for all of like maybe 30 seconds before a phantom just arrives to wreck the day and lashes me to death. On the next attempt with Joan, apart from getting a little more used to the playstyle of this, we actually find a new weapon and our next escape. With the weapon, we find and unlock a cabinet that reveals a psychostatic cutter, a pretty formidable weapon. However, the reason I mention this weapon is that there is an achievement later tied to it, so more on that later. Now, the next way of escape we find is the Mimic Portal. Apparently these labs have been experimenting with mimics, and they've made one that can use its powers to teleport things, as apparently it's punching holes to earth and stealing all of its shoes. Now for this escape though, we need 2 more characters, one to hack the computer to gain access to the device, and another to fix up the broken component. Again, nothing we can do about it now, but it is worth mentioning. Having found those 2 things, we carried on exploring and grinding neuromods and points. Now another component of this roguelike is the corruption bar. The more I play a single simulation, the more the operator gets corrupted corrupted and the more bad events can happen. From tougher enemies, more enemies, to entire sections being on fire or filled with toxic gas. Once it reaches level 5, the simulation ends and everybody is instantly killed, so we need to keep this as low as possible throughout the run. However, through exploring, we also find our next new character, Riley Yu, cousin to Morgan and Alex. Here is our third character and our third escape, as Riley has an escape that only she can use. We need to upload her consciousness to an operator on Talos 1, and apparently that's a verified escape, so no complaints from me. Over the next few attempts, we unlock more powers for our characters by using the psychoscope to scan enemies, very similarly to how it was done in the base game. We amassed points and neuromods alike, and I felt like I was making some really nice progress. We also find the last two escape methods. One, to use a shuttle to escape. It's pretty easy to do, we just need to find a schematic for a power that allows everybody to know how to fly the ship. And the last way to escape is to basically fill a cargo pod with food and drinks before firing it into space in the general direction of Earth. And yes, the food and drink are important, as I soon found out when I blasted myself into space and starved to death immediately. But with the 5 escape methods known, it's time to unlock the characters and complete their missions to get closer to that perfect run. However, I think it's time for our first couple of achievements for the DLC. Now, several hours had passed and I was beginning to understand the lay of the land, as it were. My runs were becoming faster and I was able to do more in them to set my characters up for the future. However, remember that knife that I told you about earlier? Well, it has a pretty fun twist, as I can spend my psychic power points to basically turn it into a projectile, as by charging it I can send out a burst of power. Now, the achievement is to simply kill 3 enemies in a single swing. Now, I thought that this was going to be quite tricky, but on the cystoids you can activate, they're pretty much an insta-kill as they have no health. So I found a nest, spawned them in and threw my knife, killing 3 and unlocking psychostatic efficiency. God, that was a mouthful. However, our next achievement was unlocked only moments later, as finally, and thanks to a lot of firepower, we put a bastard moon shark into its watery sandy grave, and by killing one we unlocked the next achievement, Apex Predator, which thanks to my coverage of Maneater I already knew I was. Now, something hit me after my many attempts. The further I got throughout the roguelike and the better I was doing, the harder it seemed to be, corruption aside. From power loss to harsh environments, the game certainly starts out easy and gets harder and harder, which is something that I almost wasn't expecting, but thankfully it was. As with every run, it gave a new chance on learning the routine, as well as being able to prepare for something pretty nasty moments before your escape. Now, I know it may seem like I'm also leaving a lot out, well, I kind of am, but just like the base game, if I included every discovery and every moment, I'd be here for hours, as this DLC alone took around 30 hours to complete, longer than some base games I've covered. But thankfully, our 4th character unlock was around the corner, and I was actually very surprised it took me that long to unlock him, as all we need to do to unlock Bartia is to find a corpse, which I'm certain I'd already passed naturally, but apparently not. When we find the corpse, Bartia is ours, and he will become my favourite character later on for reasons I'll explain when we get to them. Thankfully though, folks, we have another achievement. Now, like in the base game, there are a selection of Starbender books around the level, and just like then, we need to find and read every single one of them with no regrets. Again, not difficult at all, as most are in easy to reach places. But whilst foraging for neuromods, we found the last edition that we needed, pretended to gaze at its contents, and more importantly, unlocked I'm Your Biggest Fan. And honestly, I feel like I've got another achievement in me, you know. Now, in this game, there is a new version of the glue cannon. Instead of just firing a gun to make a path of rock solid goo, instead we now have a grenade which covers everything in its vicinity and freezes it like rock. And all we need to do is hit 3 enemies with a single glue canister. Again, fairly simple, but it did take me a while to remember to do it. So we simply threw a Typhon Law to get a small group of mimics together, then when we threw the canister, they all got covered, and we unlocked the next achievement, 3 Body Problem. Now, after those miscellaneous achievements are out of the way, it's time to unlock our 5th and final character. Now, to do this, we just have to complete Bartia's story objective. All 5 characters come with a unique story mission that we have to complete. So once we do Bartia's, that's every character unlock and the true grind can begin. Because if you folks know Galaxy Brain, you know what I'm about to have to do. Anyway, for now, back with Bartia. Now, his story begins in his room. When we activate the memory maker, we wake up in a bed clutching a photo before we talk to Riley Yu. She says that our men are being absolutely slaughtered, and it's by somebody called Claire, who they just find out is a Chasma spy apparently. Now we just need to track her down and take her out. Simple premise, I'd say, so we make our way to her bracelet location to hopefully knock her out. We find the room easily enough and head on inside, but you all know it wasn't going to be that easy. She has removed her bracelet and set up a trap for us, knowing that we were coming. Only problem is that the trap doesn't actually hit us, as when we went on her computer, we moved away before the toxic gas was sprayed on me, so we're fine. But Claire says that she is on her way out of here in another escape pod, so we now have to shut that down. Well, blow it up more like, but you get the plan. Now Claire was pretty cocky throughout all of this, but when we make it to the main computer moments later, she starts to beg for us to let her go. So instead we say, nah mate, you've just killed all me feckin' men, you're going down. And then we detonate a pod and watch it as it comes tumbling down back onto the planet. But who cares about Claire's silly life, as now we've done that, we have completed Bhartiya's story and unlocked Claire as our final character, also unlocking us the achievement squad goals for unlocking all 5. Now there is only one thing that I have to do before we complete everybody's story and get out of here. Unfortunately though, this is where the real painful grind comes into play. As for our next achievement, we have to get every single power unlocked for every single character. So after researching all enemies to unlock all power potential, we now just have to find over 350 neuromods to be able to get everybody leveled up. So for the next while, it's just time to grind neuromods. Now the easiest way that I could figure this out is by using Bhartiya. Now earlier I said that Bhartiya was my favourite character, and this is why. Some of Bhartiya's powers allow him to have an insane amount of health and an insane running speed. So I basically speedrun the entire map as him, going through all of the key places where neuromods were likely to spawn, from the roof of the moon base to Riley's office. With every run I was able to gather more and more neuromods. And then when I'd feel like I'd done enough for the run, I'd throw them in a box and let another character load in and use them. From a single run that could take maybe 45 minutes, I could get anywhere between 25 and 60 neuromods. So honestly, this method is the one that I found to really make sure that you can do this as fast as possible. Now it was a grind, but nothing compared to the base game. And maybe after about 6 or 7 hours of farming, we threw the last bunch into a box, launched in as Riley, and upgraded the final powers on the final human, unlocking the achievement Galaxy Brain. Now honestly folks, if you're also after doing Galaxy Brain for yourselves, I could not recommend this method anymore, as I believe it is genuinely the fastest way to get as many neuromods as you can. It is a grind, but it's not the worst when you do it like this. Now with the mammoth that is Galaxy Brain done, we only have to do the story objectives before we then do the 5-team escape and get this DLC finished. The next story has us play as the prisoner again, and his memory maker is in his cell. When we click it, we awake to a telepath hovering over us, pretending to be our son, saying that he's really upset that we aren't together anymore, and that we have to find his toy as we've missed so many of his birthdays we couldn't possibly return home without his toy. So it's time to grab his toy and to use an escape pod to get back home. Now the toy is pretty easy to find, and it's an adorable little Russian doll. We pick it up and sprint to the escape pod. Once inside, we give the toy its very own seat, and our son says that he's so proud of us. Yeah, of course it's not that jolly. Toy turns out to be a mimic, and the telepath turns our head to jam. And that sounds much more praise style, and with that we have done the prisoner's story. Now it's time for Jones. Our memory maker starts with a moider, as Jones seems to be mid-process of introducing a little spanner into somebody's brain matter, before freaking out about what she's just done. After hacking into the dead guy's computer, we find out that Joan wanted information on a Brian Chung, but since she wasn't given that information, death was found instead. So now we need to carry on this quest for Brian. Unfortunately, when we do find Mr. Chung, the life of Brian is no more, as he is now a phantom that we must strike very roughly. It's such a stupid joke. But when he dies, we loot his body and then go to search his room for anything more that we can use to complete the mission. Still not knowing what the overall plan is for this, by the way. Until that is, we make it to his room and find a sculpture of a bird. Now it turns out that Brian is a fantastic sculptor, and he was making a statue for our birthday. And since he now can't finish it, we need to by simply adding the bird to the statue's hand. We do that and the story objective is complete. A little weird, but why not? The next we do is Claire's, and it starts with her killing the crew that we was aware of in Bhartiya's storyline. Kazma indeed have hired her as a spy, but with the gig blown up and people knowing that she's double-crossed them, it's time to get all the proof we can, and vamoose. First we need to destroy the transponders and audio devices that were scattered around the base. Once found, we add them to the recycler, and jobs are good'un. It is a fairly simple story mission to be honest, but it ends with us interfering with the bot that Riley will use to upload her consciousness. Once we interfere with it, Kazma gets back in touch and says, well, bloody done mate. Also, by the way, we're not saving you, good luck, bye! Our last step is to escape the labs. We do just that moments later, and Claire's story is complete. Now the final story of course is with Riley Yu. We have to find the memory maker in the main hub of the moon base, and it starts with us listening to a recording and having to find computer modules, which are the things that you use to power different regions. We have to test a weapon to remove typhons, very much like the bomb did in the base game. However, this is horrendously easy, as we simply just go downstairs to the power room, steal a console, go up to the top, power the gun and fire it, killing the typhons in the area and unlocking our next achievement for completing all story missions, unlocking Quantum Leap. And yeah, considering how much I had to do for Joan's story compared to this one, it's weird that some characters got a much better story than others, but they're all done, so who cares. And with that folks, all the related achievements left now are just to finish the game and escape with our 5 heroes. The 3 achievements left are for escaping with all 5 of course, as well as completing every Casper order, and the final achievement is for escaping with over 50,000 credits in the bank, which thanks to the endless neuromods runs, we also had many more than we needed. So with everything on the line, let me tell you the plan for the ultimate run. Now after about maybe 20 hours of going through this, I had a pretty good idea on how I wanted this final run to go. So my idea was as such. We start with the prisoner and collect as much food and drink as possible so that we can fill up the cargo box whilst the corruption is low, before the prisoner takes the escape pod. We'll then spawn in as Bartia and take the cargo box escape route. Then as Joan we need to go and repair the mimic portal component. Once done we can take the shuttle launch. The 4th character we will use is Claire, as we'll hack the mimic portal computer and use it to escape, before finally spawning in as Riley and uploading our consciousness to the net. Now it may seem like there is a ton to do here, but honestly this is fairly chill and I was pretty confident that I could do it first try. So I loaded in and got ready to finish the game, and thankfully that's exactly what happened. We filled the box with drink and food and took the escape pod as the prisoner, then Bartia took the cargo box to space, Joan fixed the box and shuttled out of there for Claire to hack the computer and escape through the portal, before we finally sat in the chair as Riley and uploaded our brain to far away. This honestly only took us about half an hour to do, and seeing my plan work perfectly was so incredibly satisfying. But more importantly, when we left as Riley, we unlocked our next achievement, No One Left Behind, for escaping with everybody, as well as contract fulfilled for completing every Casper objective. With everything done, Peter then exits the simulation on his ship and gets ready to go back home. However, we know that Casper are lying bastards, so instead of being taken home in a safe and secure manner, we are instead told that even though we did brilliant work, they can't afford to pick us up, and they decide to remove the gravity and oxygen from the pod. Thinking fast to survive though, we insert our command key into the main computer and restart everything, and in doing so we also set a course for our pod to crash on the very moon that we've been running simulations on. Oh, Moon Crash! I finally get the DLC name now! Lovely. Anyway, the final shot shows us taking our child's teddy before we indeed smack down onto the surface of the moon. Once we awaken, we sprint outside to make it to a shuttle on the base. With alarms ringing, we get closer and closer until the screen fades to white, and we see that we did indeed make it to the ship. Unfortunately though, a mimic seems to be heading to Earth as well. And with that, the final achievement, Cryptomancer, is unlocked for beating the game with over 50,000 credits, and Moon Crash, as well as the entirety of Prey, is complete. And I really hope you enjoyed it folks, as now with Prey, the grind is over. Now, let me talk about Moon Crash first. Moon Crash was absolutely phenomenal. I honestly preferred this to the base game. It truly was a change of pace I wasn't expecting, and I loved every moment of this. Even going for the neuromod grind was quite fun, as it just allowed me to get my pathing perfect, and with the random chance problems, just made sure that every run I got better and better, and it truly felt that way. I feel like the story objectives could have been done better though, if I'm being honest, as a couple only took 2 minutes to do, whilst others took nearly an hour of trial and error. And I also wish, if anything, that you'd have to do the story objectives in the final run and make everything connect. I think that is genuinely my only complaint. I would have loved to have had the story missions connect to the final escape, but it is what it is. So yeah, even if you don't like Prey and you haven't tried Moon Crash, I would honestly really give it a go. It is fantastic, especially if you like roguelikes. Now speaking of Prey, let's get back to the base game. Again, really good. The setting, the characters, the soundtrack were all absolutely top marks. As I said in the previous video though, the achievements are a little bit much, and I did get very bored and frustrated trying to do some of the more interesting and difficult ones like killing everybody and escaping with only Dahl. However, I can't say that I didn't love Prey, because I absolutely did. And I also need to give a special shout out to the mimics, probably one of my favourite enemies in all of gaming. The idea of walking into a room and not knowing what will try to kill me was fantastic, and genuinely made me hesitant of every item. They're the best. I don't know why, but I needed to sing the mimics' praises. They were so fun. But with that folks, I think it's time to get to the stats. With Prey, it took us over 61 hours to grind all 58 achievements that this game has to offer. I'm going to be giving this game an extremely solid 8.5 out of 10, but when it comes to difficulty, I'm going to be giving this game a 7.5 out of 10. Now for the most part, it is a huge grind with the collectibles, multiple playthroughs, hefty DLC. You're going to have to put many hours into this game, so if you do want that 100%, be prepared to fight for it. However, once it's all done and dusted, it's totally worth it. For the hardest achievement as well, I'm going to be giving it to Iron It for killing every human, as not only is this deceptively difficult, but the telepath interference and need for a full playthrough just make this one a pure pain. However, there we are folks. I really hope you enjoyed and feel like I did Prey justice, as I know a lot of you have really been looking forward to this, so I hope I did right by Prey. However, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell, as next week we have a pretty amazing grind. I've been told a couple of times that the games I'm playing are just simply too good, and I need to play a game that is known for being bad. Alright, why not? Next week is Aliens Colonial Marines, one of the most famously terrible games, and I'm going to be getting all 60 achievements and even revive the dead servers just for the grind. So make sure you come back, as it is a video that you will not want to miss. And whilst you're at it folks, why not swing by my Twitch as well, where we do the achievements grind live 4 days a week, and we're currently live right now. So come say hi, it would be awesome to have you. However, I have talked for plenty today folks. Thank you all again so much for watching. Special thanks to all of my amazing patrons as well. You know how much I care for you. Thank you all so much for the additional support, and I will see all of you wonderful folks soon. Have a wonderful day, take care, bye bye for now.